Further debate, I recognize the member for Ottawa South.
It's a pleasure to rise and speak to Bill 135. And I'm going to say three things about Bill 135 that concern me, and that is with regards to staffing, the ability of the bill to allow more for-profit participation in our home care system, and a little bit about the OHTs. So I have a lot of experience with the Ontario home care system on a personal basis. For four parents, my in-laws, been doing that for about 10 years. So I do know that the biggest challenge in our home care system is staffing. And I heard the minister talk about public safety. There is no safety in your home if the PSW who is supposed to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning to get you breakfast or help you get out of bed because you're a frail elderly senior doesn't show up. And that sometimes happens more often than not. It's not very safe for them. It's not very secure for them. So if we can't make sure that inside their home is safe and secure for them, we're not doing a good enough job. Now, this past June, my mom passed away. And at the time, she wanted to be at home. She wanted to stay in her home. And so that required overnight nursing. We were lucky we had hired some people privately to give us a hand. We had some PSWs that came in regularly. They were organized by the LHIN regularly to come in for a number of months, actually longer than that. There was some consistency. But we had to add overnight nursing through home care. And here's how it worked. Right? This is the last 2 weeks of my mom's life, where she's in bed, she's at the end, she needs somebody there overnight. So the way it works is they put out a call for nurses for 4 days, and they wait to see which agency picks it up. Maybe an agency doesn't pick it up. More often than not, they don't have a person. What's even likely, if you do get somebody, it's going to be somebody different every night. So the only way we could help my mother stay at home is we were lucky enough to be able to say, we need to know someone's going to be here. We need that support so we can be her family. So we had to hire a nurse. We could do that. She could do that. But if my mom was a person who didn't have four children who were able to help her do that, or she didn't have some means to do that, she would have been on her home. There wouldn't have been a person there that night. I've spent 10 years watching the home care system. And gradually, year after year after year, our staffing levels have not even come close to meeting the need that's there. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one is, if you want good people, then you pay them. If you want good people, you give them benefits. If you want good people, you give them gas mileage and time. It's a really tough job. This bill does nothing to address that. So you're building a new engine here, and we'll talk a bit more about the other pieces of the engine, but you've got a new engine, you don't have enough gas. I think the smart thing to do would be to establish enough gas or enough fuel to run this home care engine. And that's going to begin by paying a fair wage and giving benefits. For positions like RPNs, to actually pay them a decent wage, $35 an hour. You can build all the structures you want. If you don't have the people, it doesn't work for anyone. It might look like a grand edifice and a wonderful organizational structure, but if you don't have the people, just like if half of us weren't here, I know how you feel about that, guys, but if half of us weren't here, it wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't work. But it's even worse when it comes to people's care. So My suggestion to the government is you need to work harder on this, on staffing, on making sure that Mrs. Smith gets her PSW at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. You know, I've also gone on home care visits with a number of the providers in my community. And that's the number one thing I hear, not from the people who hire or distribute this personnel, but from the people who receive the care. Those are the complaints that we get at the office. And why is that? Because we don't have enough people and they're not being treated well. Some of them have to work 2 or 3 jobs. So, what you're building is not going to work if you don't have the people. Number 2, I don't understand why, as a government, we can't actually build an agency that staffs people, PSWs, RPNs, therapists. I mean, that's what we do in hospitals. That's what we do at the Children's Hospital in my riding. So how is it that we can't somehow build something ourselves, employ people, treat them right, manage them right, make sure that people get care? It's just like we're going to hand it over to these folks over here, and you know what? They're going to manage it, but they're going to take a cut. And then the problem becomes that cut competes with the care that people need. It's just the way it works. The need for a shareholder dividend or profits starts to infringe on the level and type of care that people get. It's just the way it works, folks. You can't serve 2 masters. And this bill does nothing actually to build the public healthcare system, publicly managed, publicly funded healthcare system in our home care system. And I think the government should have at least made some sort of attempt, especially since our problem is we don't have enough people. So how come we can't, as a government, probably the biggest HMO in the whole of North America, actually figure this out? No, you're not figuring it out. I wish you were, and I'd be a lot happier if you were. Now the third thing is the Ontario health teams. So you got this beautiful edifice, you don't have enough gas in the engine, and then the part that's going to deliver it, the part that's going to distribute it, maybe 12 of them have governance. They're not fully formed. And I know the minister said, you know what, the hospitals will take care of it. Well, you may want to tell the hospitals to take care of it, right? You may want to give them the funds. You may want to give them the resources, because not all of them are ready, or not all of them know. And the problem with this is, if you transition to something that's not fully formed, or is not fully organized, or people don't know exactly what their responsibilities are, because it's not clear, I understand it very, very clearly. Thank you very much. I was going to say Associate Minister, but Parliamentary Secretary. I understand it very, very, very well, and I appreciate your interjection. Sorry, Speaker, I'll speak through you. The OHTs are not fully formed. They don't have governance. And if you start to transition to a structure that doesn't have the ability to deliver the care the way that you want it to, you know who it's going to hurt? It's going to hurt the people who work in it, and it's going to hurt the people who get the care. Now, it's not saying that OHTs are a bad idea. The problem is, it's 5 years later, and what do we have? 12 that have governance. 12. A dozen. Maybe a dozen. Right? How can an organization function without proper governance that's delivering care to people? I mean, literally every organization that we have, hospitals, urgent care centers, schools, they have governance, right? They have somebody there to make sure that you're delivering the care, that there's some oversight over the administration, that there's some understanding of what people's responsibilities are inside the organization. So, you know, I'm concerned with this bill, and you'll have a chance to ask me questions later, because I still have 4 minutes left. I can get a lot done in 4 minutes. Anyhow, I'm just concerned that when you move to this bill, as we transition to this change, what will happen is we're not going to have enough people. It's not going to be well organized, and people are going to fall between the cracks. So in our rush to change things, we have to be careful, all of us here, that we don't actually hurt people who need our help. And I'm genuinely concerned when I look at this bill and I think of my experiences with home care over 10 years, and that's just in my family, and over 24 years working in a community office. That's been mine for the last 10. That's the concern that I have here, is that we don't have enough people. We still think it's okay that shareholders get a cut of our healthcare system, and that the OHTs, which aren't a bad idea, just aren't fully formed or ready. I think those are fair and legitimate concerns, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. It's time for oral question. I have a member from Eglinton, Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member from Ottawa South for his presentation today. You know, it's interesting. Obviously, we have health human resource challenges across the system. We've had those for years, and unfortunately, the member was in power, was actually the parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Health for some years, and they did nothing to address those staffing challenges. Now, this government has taken all kinds of steps to address staffing challenges, but that isn't what this bill is about. This bill is about fixing Ontario Health at Home to make sure that we can provide the care under that auspices, so Ontario Health teams can develop these new models of care, which we talked about in our speeches. I don't know if you heard those. But we're also doing other things to make sure we recruit, retain, and train staff. So it's going to be challenging, obviously, to have enough staff, but that's why we're doing all the things we have been doing. I think every jurisdiction in the world is facing staffing challenges. Would the member opposite like to tell us what they did to address staffing challenges over the last 15 years when they were in government?
$4 an hour over a period of time. We did that. Actually, this government raised PSW wages during the pandemic. Only a month later than everybody else, doing so screaming and kicking, right? When we needed to actually raise their wages, like at the beginning of April, right? We didn't do it. You waited a month. So don't wag your finger at us over here, okay? Yeah, you were. Yeah, what did you do? All I'm saying is the staffing situation in Ontario in home care is extremely acute. I have never seen it this acute, and the problem is this isn't going to work if you got no gas to put in the engine.
Question, member from Fort York. Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, actually, I'm going to wag my finger at the member from Ottawa South as well. The Liberal government was in power for 15 years, and the Conservatives before the Liberals had left. Tried to convert or started to convert our long-term care homes from not-for-profit to for-profit homes. We saw a horrific report from the armed services when they were in there, and I'll just read a quote from the headline of the Toronto Star in May 2020. In homes with an outbreak of COVID-19, residents in for-profit facilities were about twice as likely to catch COVID-19 and die than residents in non-profits. So, was it a mistake for the Liberal government to support for-profit long-term care homes? Should you have been converting those back to not-for-profit homes where people actually had a greater chance of surviving the pandemic?
Thank you. Response, a member from Ottawa South.
Thank you very much. Look, I have two large not-for-profit homes in my riding, so that's been my experience in expanding St. Pat's Home. And look, I agree. I think we invested in long-term care privately because it was a way to keep debt off the books. It wasn't about the quality of care. I don't think that was the right way to go. I've said that before. I've always believed investing in not-for-profit care. But we're at where we're at right now, and I think the government needs to try to go in a different direction, and whether that's establishing their own agency that employs home care workers, or, hey, government's not a bad thing, folks. It's what got us here. It's what's built us an education system. It's what built us a hospital system. It's what's built us a society, because we had a government. Yeah, well, the government pays you. The government pays you and me. It's not a bad...
Thank you. Thank you. I'll request all the members to direct your answers and questions through the speaker. Member from Newmarket, Aurora. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the member opposite, I do find it extremely interesting, as he noted about the PSWs increase. They made an increase to their wage. Well, we made it permanent when we actually increased it. I did want to take note that this act will consolidate 14 home and community care support services organizations into one single organization. So it's going to provide a strong, centralized foundation to support the stability of home care services now and into the future as it rolls out into the 57, soon 58 Ontario health teams. And you talk further about the PSWs. I'm not sure if you heard the announcement today, which is all part of your health, of $300 million over 3 years to help thousands of people we're recruiting into the PSW positions. These are all parts of your health. So my question to the member opposite, can you get behind this massively modernized change for our home care community?
Thank you. It's a member from Ottawa South for the response.
I will reiterate, government is a good thing. That's why we're here. That's why we have a great province. So I just want to establish that, because I heard somebody say more government over there. I think we do some things pretty well when we put our mind to it. Our PSW wage enhancement was permanent. You added on to that. My point here is you're highly centralizing something that needs to be delivered in people's living rooms and bedrooms and kitchens and in their homes. That's exceptionally local. And the organizations that you want to deliver that are not fully formed. They are not ready. So I don't see this working for people. Maybe it'll work for you, and on the org chart on the wall, it's going to look great. But it's not going to work for people unless the OHTs are ready and we somehow get enough people there to ensure that people get care.
Thank you so much for the question. I see member from Hamilton West and Custer Dundas.
Thank you very much to the member. I know that you and I shared stories. I also lost my mother just a few short months ago, and we had the same exact situation. If we didn't have a nurse in the family and weren't able to pay for private care, my mom wouldn't get her final wish, which was to die at home, and so we were happy we were able to provide her that last dignity of care. But I have to say, when I hear this government who says they're against big government, but all they do is centralize and grab power in the Premier's office, when I hear them say modernize, I think privatize. I mean, every time they say centralize or modernize, we're talking about privatization. And this bill does absolutely nothing to ensure that advisory boards aren't fully representative from big companies, just like the Retirement Home Regulatory Authority Board is peopled with like Chartwell and Indwell. What in this bill frightens you when it comes to making sure that private for-profit operators aren't running the show?
Member from Ottawa South for the response.
Thank you very much for that question, Mike. It's interesting you bring that up because, we've seen in the last 6 months that, if you're accessing primary care in this province, don't forget your OHIP card, but always remember your gold card too, because that's what's happening in Ontario right now. People are being asked to be paid membership fees, to pay extra fees. People are going to have their cataracts done, and somebody says, well, if I do you in the hospital, I can do you next, February. But I can do you next week if you come for $3,000. So it's happening all over the province. So, I hope that this doesn't happen in home care. I hope that, we're not going to get to this point where, people have to pull out their credit card to get the services that they need.
I see the member from Eglinton, Lawrence Eglinton.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you again to the member opposite for his contributions. I was sorry to hear about your mum's passing, and certainly all of us have experience, I think, well, all of us, maybe the older ones, who are of a certain age. I have personal experience with home care for my parents as well, and we're all agreed, I think, that the current system is not providing the home care that our seniors deserve, and that is why we are going about making the changes we're making. We did take the service maximums off. It used to be, under the former home care legislation, that you could only have 4 hours of home care. We recognize that people want to stay in their home, and we want them to stay in their home as long as possible. It's better for everybody. So, would the member opposite support making changes and allowing some of our Ontario health teams to deliver integrated models of care, delivering home care differently? We gave a few examples. Did you like those?
Thank you. Member from Ottawa South for response.
I think local agencies are best to deliver home care. And if they're ready and they're able to do it, I know they were doing bundled care at St. Joseph's Hospital. They had a pilot that's been going on for it's probably not a pilot anymore, but 6 or 7 years, which is part of addressing home care as part of the continuum of hip replacements. Look, the system needs to be better. And my point is, I don't think what we're doing here is going to deliver the results that you think it's going to deliver as fast as you think it's going to deliver it. The people who you want to deliver this aren't ready. And that's my biggest concern.
Thank you so much. That's all the time we had allocated for question and answers.